he's finally done with it. I can't believe it. I don't have to watch him play the thing anymore because it's always like popping up down there. Like Paul's playing Void Destroyer 2. Like about every 5 minutes, I get that bounce. So I don't know. Can we get like an agreement with Paul that he'll never play his game again?
Yeah, right.
Probably not.
Are you sick of seeing it?
The reason you see that is because I go in the game, I test some bug, I leave the game, I type like a line of code, I play the game again. It's just like on and on like that. It's crazy.
He's already.
It just happens to be connected to Steam.
Jim, he's already talking about Void Destroyer 3. He's already talking about the next game. So probably we'll get to that too, by the way. But yeah, we're gonna be here. We're gonna be here for a while. Also joining us is your co-host Spaz.
Hello.
And your co-host Hunter.
Yep, I'm here.
And for you heard him talk a moment ago, a record 5th appearance on this podcast. I don't think anyone else. The only people that have come close to the Kerberos people, and they've been on 4 times. So Paul
and Spaz doesn't count.
No.
Yeah, I don't count.
No, you don't count.
I was a guest before I was a host.
Yeah, you don't count. No, Paul, welcome, Paul Z. I'm not going to try and butcher your last name. We agreed on that last time. I'm not going to do it.
Hey guys, good evening.
Yeah, the developer of the recently released and amazing Void Destroyer 2, back for a fifth time. So you are now our most numerous guest that we've ever had on.
Nice.
So that is awesome. Oh, right. Thank you, Spaz. I forgot to put a link.
Sure thing.
Folks, we're testing out Twitch only streaming because multi-streaming is doing nothing for me. So I don't think. Not really doing it in the growth area. So we're going to, throw our eggs in one basket. So Paul, welcome back. The last time we had you on, I looked it up, was near the end of 2016. So you've basically had this thing in early access for roughly 3+ years. And
3 years, 4 months.
Woof. And I gotta say, you had what seemed to be a really great early access period. There were a lot of updates. A lot of patches, a lot of dev updates, I saw like every time you had an update, there was a lot of people talking about it. So let's talk about the journey from there to here. How do you think being in early access, and especially being early access for such a long period of time, how do you think that went for you?
Well, as far as the game goes, I think it read really well. As far as development, as far as like my mental state, there's a lot of ups and downs. Turns out that people got really burned out on early access games. People were like so suspicious, because of other titles, and even let's say even my title being long in early access. Let's say. People were burned before. Also, Steam separated early access from new releases based on like customer feedback and things like that. So it was a much different experience than the first time around in Void Destroyer. The industry is constantly changing, just like YouTube's changing with their rules. Things like that. The same thing happens on Steam. It's kind of funny. I watch YouTubers and they complain about how YouTube is screwing them over. And I'm like, now you guys see how we feel, It's like the same thing,
Oh my God.
It's the same thing. It's like YouTube kind of makes it harder on everybody except the people at the top, right?
Of course.
The same thing happens with Steam, It's just the nature of the beast. So as far as development goes, I'm actually shocked at how well it turned out. Kind of hate to brag, but it turned out better than I thought it was going to. But at the same time, it took me way longer than I thought it was going to. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there.
Yeah, but you were so open about your development. I mean, I would see the responses to your numerous dev posts, and nothing. I never really saw any complaints about why it taking so long or anything like that. Like most people seemed pretty okay with the length of time. I mean, you have games like Star Sector taking 9 years now in early access. And people love that thing. So
Mhm.
And there's Pulsar, which has been in
Right.
early
Oh,
access
God.
for a long time.
oh god, what,
But
5-6
they're making
years?
good progress on
That
it,
one?
and they've got
Yeah.
they got a great community regardless of
And
how long it's taking, just because of how they're handling it.
And yeah, I think that's the key. I mean, it took a long time, but you had a great community around your game, and you also had a lot of positivity around your game, which you were
The
able to
amazing
foster.
thing was that old players and new players would go through the game like top to bottom. So the community really helped out as far as like features and bug testing and things like that. Couldn't have done it without early access.
Yeah, and there is a lot. There's a lot between the top and the bottom with this game. Let us talk about the evolution between Void Destroyer 1 and Void Destroyer 2, because if I recall, I mean, I didn't get very far in Void Destroyer 1. It was more of if I recall, it was more of a linear experience, Void Destroyer 1.
Mhm.
And it was
Yep.
brutally hard. But then you released the Sandbox DLC for Void Destroyer 1, which was really a precursor to this in a lot of ways. Now, is this like the same engine? Is this an updated engine?
Yeah, so what I did was I released Void Destroyer 1. I did the polishing, the bug fixes, and whatever I could there. And then I basically made a copy of Void Destroyer 1, and I called it the Sandbox, let's say. At which point I added the Sandbox features, and it became basically like a prototype, like a very early pre-alpha vertical slice prototype. Then that got released as the mini Sandbox DLC. And then after that, Jesus Christ, I'm hearing two cats fight. I'm sorry, guys.
Oh my gosh. Is that what that was?
They're like across the house too.
Oh my god, because we heard that. I heard that on your thing.
I was about to say, this must be some big
It's
cats.
immortalized now.
Turns out it's a lion and a jaguar.
One of them is as big as a lion, I swear. So then, where was it? Yeah, so then I copied it again, and that became Void Destroyer 2. So essentially everything for Void Destroyer 1 stayed. Stuff got added on, and then towards the end, some of the things from Void Destroyer 1 were removed, like manually placing platforms around bases, research system, like pretty basic things. They weren't like really hugely developed things. They just didn't fit in Void Destroyer 2 so much. So, but the majority of stuff is it's like 95% Void Destroyer 1 plus like 300% Void Destroyer 2. As far as like code,
It feels like that in the game too, because it's such a massive thing. When people say it's Mount and Blade, if I say it fast enough, it sounds like Mountain Blade. People have compared it to Mount and Blade in space, which is, I would say, fairly accurate. It is a big open sandbox of a thing, and there is a story, but you could probably ignore it if you wanted to, right? If you really wanted to, you wouldn't have to do it.
There is a sandbox only mode.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
But the story mode is like more of the actual game, because there's the story is pretty extensive. It takes you from the beginning till the end. It doesn't like cut you off in the middle. It literally takes you from the beginning to the end. There's the story took me like a year and a half to put in. Took forever. So it's a pretty substantial part of the game.
And does it kind of guide you from the small ships to the fleet to the taking over territory, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so the way it does it is it puts certain requirements, like, okay, this first mission you can do in a fighter, and then this next mission you need a gunship. So it's already assuming that the player, did X number of missions, got, certain amount of money to buy a gunship. Then it's like, hey, now you need a Corvette. Now you need a little fleet. Now you need several bases, that type of thing. So it doesn't really force it on you,
Right.
But it says like, hey, come back when you have this, or if you already do, if you want, you can keep going, or you can do more of the sandbox stuff,
I gotta say, I'm loving the sandbox stuff. I'm also loving the variety. Like when I saw there was a specific repair ship, I have to say I love that thing. I love it so much. Whenever I get into the game these days, that's all I've been doing is repair missions when I find them, because they pay well, and
they pay based on how bored you are. How long they take.
It's fine though. It pays pretty well, and it's like great to listen to a podcast while you're repairing stuff. Plus
the thing was that the game's called Void Destroyer, right? Destroyer. So people are always like, we want more peaceful missions, and I'm like, Jesus, how the hell do I manage that? So when I put in the repair missions, they were like attacking fleets coming at you, and they would destroy the station before you could repair it,
Oh.
So I'm like, do I get rid of this mission? Because this mission's like just totally broken, like you can't repair this thing before this fleet shows up and destroys it, Do I like get rid of this mission? But I'm like, no, it's like one of the few peaceful missions in the game, I'm like, okay, I'll just remove the enemy fleet. And I'm sure there's players that are just going to like sort of enjoy the peaceful change of pace,
Right.
So every element like that has like a story behind it, that's how development was. Every little thing has been like fought out over so long. Compromises have been made, sacrifices, and people still like will point stuff out that could have been done better. I'm like, oh Jesus, why didn't I think of that?
I did have a question about the repair thing. I didn't really see those missions pop up until I got a repair ship. Is one contingent on the other, or are those missions just there when you go to that station? Okay.
So the way missions work is for factions. So these are totally separated from the story, but there's all these different factions in the game.
Right.
And usually you do like an introductory mission for them, and that opens up several auto-generated missions. And the more you do of those, the more missions open up. So you didn't see them because they weren't like at your mission rank yet.
Oh, I see. But once you do
they just kind of keep expanding. And then there's a little bit of a random element of them appearing, certain missions. Certain missions need certain things in the overworld mode, like clearing an asteroid field of pirates needs actual pirates to be there. Sort of stuff. Some are just like just infinite and auto-generated. Some have a little bit of that component to them. So for that mission, you can actually hire repair ships.
Oh, okay.
You don't actually have to own a repair ship. You could just hire a bunch.
Okay.
Even more, potentially even more profit. Plus you can do it faster with multiple repair ships.
I like doing it myself, though. I just really enjoy doing it myself. Now I saw there's another ship that's like a shuttle. So, like, are there passenger missions in there? I haven't gotten that far yet.
There aren't any passenger missions, but you can have that shuttle doing automated runs for you. And that actually boosts base economy.
I didn't know you could do that.
So actually bases will make money faster. So later on, when you have your own empire, you can set them up for yourself to boost your bases.
Okay. So the evolution that you're supposed to go through this game, it sounds like, because I'm still with repair ships and whatnot, is basically you start off with one fighter, you do a bunch of missions, you get up to like a gunship, which is like a tiny cap ship, basically, is what a gunship is. And then it sounds like you go up to an actual cap ship because there are frigates and whatnot. And then you start doing fleet stuff. And then you take over. Do you take over stations or do you build stations?
You take over a base.
Okay.
And then you expand from there to other bases.
Wow. And I got to say, I love the different factions. So far, my favorite is the one that uses asteroids as like the base for everything, like its ships and its bases. I love that one.
Yeah. Everybody always calls them like potatoes, you know?
They do look like potatoes. You're right. Oh my God, they do look like potatoes. Because of all the cell shading, they look like potatoes. Oh my God, that's so true.
some might say they're potatoes, but that's
let's call the whole thing off. How many factions are in the game? I don't know if I've met everyone yet.
So there's 3 different pirate factions. 2 are actual factions. One is just like a mix of just baseless, you know, criminals. There's 1 bounty hunter faction. There's 1 military faction. There's a civilian faction. And there's this sort of mercenary faction. So it's about 6 major factions. Well, 7 if you count like the aliens. Yeah, I guess you could. I guess you would count the alien guys too. So there's about 7 factions. Not all of them have as many bases as the others, you know. Not all of them you do missions for. You know, you don't do missions for the aliens. They're aliens, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The character you play is kind of alien, at least in the way other characters react to them. Like,
right.
Because explain, like, because you're not like a full human. You're not really human at all in this. You kind of are, I guess, but you're kind of a. How would you explain what your character is?
So behind the scenes, you know, the games are pretty dark. You know, when you sort of dig into the lore, the games are pretty dark. But essentially, imagine you're you, right? You have loved ones, and you become in such circumstances that you need help. Let's say to your loved ones, or maybe you're running for your life, and you have no other choice essentially than to sell your body. You sell your body, whatever problem you had goes away. You know, let's say you have a sick loved one, or you're going to go to jail, get executed. You know, so your final option is this, right? You sell your body to this sort of mysterious group. They take you. They replace whatever components they need of your body with you know, cybernetics to make you a better killing machine. Essentially, they wipe your memory and they put you in a ship and they sell you. Somebody buys you and they're like, hey, I need to attack so and so, and I just need these throwaway troops, you know, and that's what you are essentially. So it's a pretty grim sort of outlook on the future, where essentially you sell yourself to some super rich entity, you know, and then you're used as like shock troops, as cannon fodder, you know. So this faction was a bit of an antagonist in Void Destroyer 1, where they were hired and they were used against the player. In Void Destroyer 1, there was this big war, and then the leftover stubs. Stub is sort of like slang for what they are. Basically, stub means sort of like a short life. You know, they're not intended to live long. You know, they're just intended to be sent into battle. So there was these leftover, basically amnesiac cyborgs, and you're one of them in Void Destroyer 2. But like the player at the beginning of the game, you have like no clue what's going on. You know?
Right.
You're in a sort of a hostile place with no friends at all and no memory. You know, and you just sort of discover it. So it's a kind of a cool trope. You know, many games do that, where you're like an amnesiac or you don't remember anything. You know, and that way they can explain things to you, the player, character doesn't know versus otherwise you're like, oh, why are you explaining this to me? I've been here. I'm a father of 5 kids and I've lived in this city and you're explaining to me who the mayor is, doesn't make any sense. But the amnesiac trope is pretty handy as far as writing goes. So it just kind of turned out like that. I'm like, oh man, who's going to be the main character in this game? And then the art style came along and it was like all this sort of trippy artificial art style. So it just kind of everything kind of fell together that the main character would be like a cyborg. And I just so happened to have a group of cyborgs that were involved in part 1 and that would be left over,
I have to admit,
it's kind of a lot of lucky coincidences.
I have to admit, I love the other NPCs' reaction to your character. They'll be like, you'll run into characters and they'll be like, "Oh, one of you."
Right.
I find that amusing in a dark way. I find go ahead. Sorry.
So everybody hates you because, nothing ever good happens when these things are around. Imagine them just being like, if you see this thing, it's going to try to kill everything around itself and not care if it dies. It's like just a total nightmare, like a rabbit, just like a rabbit animal, but like a human being in a ship, with huge guns on it, so everybody's going to hate you. Everybody's going to hate, and you were involved in a war against the so-called good guys. So they're going to not like you because of that either, plus the stigma of somebody seeing you and knowing that you were so desperate that you had to sell yourself to do this. So you're hated on all fronts. Who you were, this desperate nobody with a huge, gigantic problem of some kind, and who you are right now, like a crazy killing machine, essentially, that's just going to be told what to do by somebody, So yeah, there's some layers to it, I guess, if you dig deep into it.
And you seem to make you make people some people nervous, you make some people angry. It's actually pretty great. So I wanted to talk about the flight engine itself because, I mean, I'm guessing you're supposed to spend some of your time earlier in the game behind in the cockpit, but then as you grow, you're meant to be more in the overworld mode. I would reckon.
But at the end of the game, you can play it entirely through overworld mode, like a 4X game.
Oh, wow. Okay. But in the beginning of the game, and the way I prefer to play, at least for now, is still in the cockpit mode. And you have this great engine that not only it's a full 6 degrees of freedom engine, with all kinds of thrusters and everything. It's really great. You've able to put together battles at a scale I don't think I've really seen. I don't know if you saw in one of my videos, there were what must have been dozens of fighters and larger crafts zipping around shooting at each other. It was like almost overwhelming.
It definitely was. Yeah. I mean, by the time you target something, might already be dead,
That happened so many times. That happened almost every time that I would target something, turn around to face it, boom, it's gone. Okay, target something, turn around to face it. Oh, that's also gone. So it's like, whoa, wait a minute.
So, when I talk about like war and conflict, I have no clue what I'm talking about except what I've seen like on television and games.
Right.
But I was trying to create something like that. That kind of imagine it just totally chaotic. Just very chaotic. You're almost like, it's almost as if you're paralyzed,
I almost was.
Or you don't, Yeah.
Yeah, I almost was because it was so intense. But I have to say the flight, the engine, the combat, everything feels really great. It is very different from the typical World War II in space style space combat you'll engage in with a lot of games. It is very, very much more Newtonian, which I like. And it's very intense. Like you really have to do all these little maneuvers to avoid being hit, but also try to get a shot.
Right. Yeah. So it's more about maneuvering than aiming. Most of the weapons help you aim. And in fact, a little bit into the game, you get turrets, which just do the aiming for you. So you're more so worried about getting hit and positioning yourself in the best way possible, you know? And that's where giving you the control over your thrusters in every direction really, really kicks in.
It's great. And I gotta say, I love how different all the ships feel. Like every ship I've flown feels different. From that first little zippy fighter thing with 2 little pop guns to that just massive repair. Well, it's probably the biggest ship I've flown yet, but that massive repair. I know there are bigger ships, but that repair ship just is such a pig. Now when you get even to the bigger ships like frigates, like what is the biggest ship in the game? Is it the frigate? I think it's the biggest I've seen.
No, there's way bigger ships. There's dreadnoughts.
Oh my God! Can you buy a dreadnought? Can
can't buy it. No.
Oh,
that's something like a nation of a planet would build.
Oh, so what is the biggest ship the player can have?
Well, you don't buy it. Spoiler alert.
Oh, okay. That's fine. That's fine. No, that's fine. Yeah. But when you get, my question was, when you get those larger ships, could you still do a cockpit mode? Because you have multiple view modes. You have the cockpit mode, you have the turret mode, and all that stuff. Could you still do if you wanted to? If you wanted to fly?
100%.
Oh wow, that's cool.
100%. So there's a camera for capital ships. But you can use it on fighters. You can use it on, so everything's available to everything. In fact, some of the huge big cap ships have, they have turreted weapons. In which case, the cockpit mode might not be the best one, but some of them have just huge guns attached to them, or beams. And in which case, being in the cockpit is pretty useful for aiming. And of course, you can just let the crew take over control. So you have too many options. You have too many options.
I don't know if I don't know if there is such a thing. Now, I think I've got about 6 or 7 hours in the game, and I'm still, relatively low level. I've got the repair thing. I've got a few fighters to watch my back with me. But for the story mode, at least, how long typically would you envision would it take someone to get through the campaign?
I mean, initially I was like, 20 hours, Now it looks like it's more about 40 hours.
Ooh, nice. Very nice.
But it's really, the player controls a lot of the speed of it,
Sure. Like how many side missions do they do and stuff like that?
Right. If you're just focused on, because really your level is how much money you have. If you're focused on that, you could greatly speed that up versus somebody else just like, I'm going to do all the missions. I'm going to do all the factions. I'm going to check out all the ships,
Yeah, see, that's what I've been doing.
Which I think is good. That's the kind of game I enjoy too. But so it's really hard to say, I've seen various play times. I never really timed it specifically. If I was a bigger studio, I could give you like an actual answer to this. But I can't,
So, but it isn't just
no clue,
is it just you? Is it just you that worked on this game, or are there some other folks that worked on it with you?
So it's definitely not just me, but it's only one person did it full time, and that's me. So basically, it's me and contract artists, musicians, 2D guys, 3D guys, modelers. Many of them have been here since Void Destroyer 1. the musician and sound guy has been here since Void Destroyer 1, you know. I would send him, hey, I need some sound. I need a sound clip. I need a sound effect. I need some music. A few days later, I get it, you know, that type of stuff. I had a pretty steady modeler that did most of the models. But the last year of development, he didn't really do that much because for budget reasons, I kind of started slowing those down quite a lot. And to add to that, the game engine is built off of components from the internet, like free open source components, like a rendering engine, physics engine, things like that. So when you add it all up, quite a lot of people had their hands in Void Destroyer 1, Void Destroyer 2, but only one full-time person. That's me. Whenever you say like one-man developer, it's really, for any game, for most games, it's really not that accurate. But if you mean like one full-time developer or one coder, well, it's not even that. But I always like to say like, hey, without so many people being involved, it just wouldn't be possible, you know?
Yeah, because it's hard to imagine one person is a great artist and musician and sound designer and writer and programmer and such. So like it makes sense to, you know, work on your strengths and then bring in some outside help as you can afford it to do the other stuff. Because it's a great looking game.
So,
there are no complaints here. It is a great looking game.
Yeah, I like the art style of this actually more than the first game. You know, it's cleaner and whatever. But I did notice that you finally listened to me and you made space black instead of that blue color.
yeah, so I wonder how much that hurt me when I launched into early access, because a lot of people, I don't know about a lot, but there was a bunch of feedback about that. I tried to go for something different, and I think I wasn't popular enough. There's like a Simpsons quote, "Oh, I'm not popular enough to be different," you know? Yeah, I might have taken it a little too far. And it felt kind of empty. When you can see everything, it feels kind of empty, you know? When it's a little darker, it feels a little more mysterious, a little more full, a little more spacey, I guess, you know?
Yeah,
Because what I was going for...
You still have the option there that you can toggle it?
Yeah.
Or is it just stuck? Okay.
It's still there. There's a different skybox you can buy. That's like the old one. The idea is that the character is so artificial that they don't see through human eyes. They see through like the ship sensors. So they wouldn't see space as dark, you know? If you were in a ship and if you were in combat, you would want to see everything, right?
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't want to see like space dust and even stars. Like, what's the point of seeing stars at all? You know, there's no point.
I'm glad you left the option in because it was an interesting experiment, right? But it's just like everybody's initial reaction, because I think what bothered everybody is the color blue that you chose was the same color that Windows blue screen of death is. So it just kind of gave everybody some trauma.
Yeah, that might be it. Yeah, I didn't think of that one. Yeah, there's different color. The color of the skybox was linked to the faction. So blue was the civilian, and that was like the first faction you came across. Green was the military, and that green like never looked right to me either. It was a little too intense. So there's a bunch of issues there that I worked through. I added this dynamic skybox for like creating nebulas and things like that, and star fields and like space dust, things like that. So I think that worked out pretty well.
We actually have a question from the chat. Quote, I read the developer's latest update, and he stated that he's upgrading the art style for the next game. My question is he going for a more, quote, realistic look or staying with this style?
So, yeah, this is a good question, because let's say I stayed with the same style, right? Now I have to pay zero money, right? Because I already have everything. That's a big advantage, right? That's definitely something that I'm considering. But at the same time, many people were, well, a lot of people like the art style. It's polarizing, right? It's when you make something more generic, more people are going to like it, you know. When you make something a little wilder, more people might talk about it, but it could also turn some people off, you know. So what the art style of the new game is, I'm always working with scarcity, so it kind of depends on what I can get, essentially, you know, what I'm willing to risk, what I'm willing to give up, you know. Am I willing to spend a lot of money on it, and risk you know, that sort of aspect? Can I find an artist that can make something better than part two, in exchange for some other deal, you know? So it's gonna really depend on that. Those are really tough. It's a really tough question to answer.
Yeah, because
Could you do it? Could you do it like an optional thing? Because you had like in the first game, you could turn the cell shade stuff on and off. You could make it heavier or whatever. Like, could you just do that with it, and that way you're not having to redo the art assets? You can just kind of like throw another shader on it and satisfy.
So the current style is made around that shader. The way it goes is because there's so much color variation. That shader picks up that color variation, and it creates and it does calculations based on the change between one color and the next, and it puts the outlines between them. So the art style is like totally built around that shader, from my perspective. But in my ideal world, let's say, to answer that question, you know, I would go for a more realistic art style, not totally realistic. Obviously, on an indie type level, it wouldn't be like Elite Dangerous or Star Citizen stuff, you know. I'm always tempted to go with stuff more interesting, or maybe more unique is a better word. Sort of like different art styles, simpler art styles that are a little more striking.
well,
I always like that.
One benefit.
So it's kind of a.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Brian.
No, I was going to say, I think because you don't have the resources of Frontier Development or was it Cloud Imperium, I think one reason I appreciate indie so much, like you and others, is because you guys, because you can't put all that fancy graphics out there, you focus more on the gameplay. Whereas a game like Elite Dangerous or Star Citizen does not have the features even you have. Neither of those games have the features you have. Because
they're different types of experiences. You know, you could say like Elite Dangerous is about immersion, or Star Citizen is about waiting 20 minutes for a train on a planet to take you to a different part of the planet where you buy a hat.
I'm gonna tell you something, bro. I'm gonna tell you something,
dude. You just nailed that on the head.
Oh my god! I was watching someone stream Star Citizen the other day because I'm like, I wonder if this has gotten better. And he spent the first 20 minutes buying an outfit. Like, no lie, he spent the first 20 minutes of the stream just buying an outfit. I'm like, really? And then like he finally gets
Star Citizen. You can't buy another color for space. Unlike Void Destroyer.
But then he starts flying around, and this is great. But he starts flying around. It takes like 20 to 30 real minutes to get from one place to another at one point.
Yeah.
Why?
Oh, dude, when you do the warp thing and you go to
the
like
warp
the
thing,
planet that's far, there's one that's far, and you're talking 45 minutes.
Dude,
and
it is
you can get
worse
interdicted
than
on.
Elite.
Oh god,
Jesus Christ!
Yeah,
it's worse than E. Like it is. I'm not
here. It makes no sense.
I want immersion, but like, dude, I also have a real life.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and it's an online game, so it's not like you can like fast travel or like, why can't I just rest while I'm flying or something? But no, you got to be live or whatever because it's immersion, quote unquote. And I'm talking to this guy. I'm like, are you enjoying this? Like, wouldn't you like if they even gave you a game of cards right now to play? Like throw some solitaire on your bunk, while you're traveling. But no, there's nothing to do while you're warping. It's like
playing hopscotch in the cargo bay.
exactly,
dude. That's what they could do. They could put in a card game that's
what I said. That's what I'm trying to say.
But it's all the spaceships in the game, right? With stats, and it'd be like Pokemon. You got to collect them all. But then you can actually play like cards against other people while you're flying incredible distances because they got multi-crew ships, right? So you can have like 5 people on your ship all waiting for 45 minutes.
all sitting around
doing a card table.
Throw some more stuff in.
So basically, we're talking cards against boredom here. Is what we're talking about.
Oh god!
Well, what was it like in what was it, Knights of the Old Republic? You could play the Pazak or whatever it was game.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Well, is that the Chewbacca chest?
It's that, like little chest.
No. It was a card game. It was an actual, just like you're playing. It's like you're playing.
Oh god, right. That's right. I forgot about that. I forgot about that.
Or you could really get my immersion going if you had a Nausicaan walk in and go, Domjet, human play, Dom. Like I'd be all over that in a heartbeat.
You know what they should give every player?
Just stabbed through the heart.
Just every player is a douchebag with an acoustic guitar. Because every party has one. Yeah. Every party has one. It's just, I'm gonna play this thing I've been working on for 6 months.
No, and it'd just be like the songs from Stalker, right? They sing in Russian.
Everyone is named Chad. Oh, thanks so much. Chad. Awesome. Oh. Thank you, Twitch chat, for that gem. That's
great. God damn it! I can't talk.
So, Paul, when can we expect this in Void Destroyer 3?
Yeah, so in Void Destroyer 2, going from base to base takes like 10 seconds.
I know. It's great.
Yeah.
You have time compression, and it works, and it's fabulous.
And here's the thing about Elite Dangerous. Like, okay, have this immersion, right? Have this cockpit travel thing, right? You do it once or twice or whatever, and then just have this fast method. You can just do both, right?
But not
they did in Helium Rain. That's exactly what they did. You had to dock manually.
Oh, that's right.
X number of times, and then after you've bought the module that allows you to auto dock,
right.
You can auto dock anytime you like, unless it's damaged.
Yeah, it's a different philosophy. It's like, hey, wasting. Let's just say wasting players' time, or just sort of respecting their time.
Yeah, this is why everyone
I don't really.
No,
I don't really understand certain things like this.
No, I don't either. I mean, when I funded the Kickstarter for Star Citizen, I was like, oh, look, another freelancer. Because you never traveled long in Freelancer. And when you did, there was always this great risk of being knocked out of a trade lane or something. And then, I'm in a fight suddenly. That was great. I mean, but you can't do that with a multiplayer game, an online game. Which is why it's stupid that these games are online. Which is why
you can definitely do that. You can just spawn enemies in, but when it's a trip, it's like an hour trip or 20 minutes, and you spawn an enemy in, and it sends the player back into the last base. That they probably were like, can't piss players off that much. I'm guessing that was their reasoning why they can't just spawn aliens at you and like, or pirates, and just kick you off from the from your route.
Oh, it'll interdict you, like in Star Citizen, while you're flying the 45 minutes.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that happened to that guy that I was watching.
Yeah. Well, the first time I got interdicted, it was like coming right out of the station. I get knocked out, and I was like, oh, shit, pirates. And I took a shot at one. Well, here it was actually the cops. So now I've got a law level,
Oh, great.
and I died.
no.
But then when you respawn, you've still got your crimes. So then it's like if I'm docked from the station, I'm toast, right? So it was just like, what do I do? Like,
You got to go to jail. Got to go to that space jail. You see
Is-
that? That's
Is that
What do you
gonna,
do in
is that
space
going to
jail?
happen in Star Citizen? Are you going to go to jail?
Totally, dude. It's there.
What?
Yeah,
yeah.
What?
Yeah, I'm not
Ugh.
joking. There's going to be like a space jail, and you have to
they-
log in and
when-
real life hours in
when
it
you-
to pay
when
off your
you-
crimes.
when you want to go and do like a cargo mission, you actually have to go land at the port, go and hand pick up the cargo, walk it into your cargo bay, and put it down. And God forbid you have more than one crate, because then you have to go back and get the next. And then you have to fly it all the way where it's got to go. You got to get back in your cargo bay. You got to go pick up that box and go like hand deliver it to somebody.
It's the price you pay for being a nice pirate.
But there's something that I love about Star Citizen. It kind of highlights the difference between Star Citizen and like indie games, right? Many of them, they're like, you can take a coffee cup and fly it to some planet and leave it there, and then like a week later, some player comes by and finds a coffee cup. You know, I don't know if you guys
Who cares?
remember them saying that, but they said
Who
that maybe
cares?
a few times.
Well,
it's like
no,
I could just create a random coffee cups anywhere. It's like the same thing happened.
What?
You can take, you know what the first thing somebody will do is they will take 1,000 coffee cups somewhere and arrange them on the planet in the form of like a giant wang that you can see from orbit.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
great.
pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Doing that is pretty cool. But just putting a single coffee cup somewhere and then hoping that some player comes by later, sees the coffee cup, and thinks that somebody else put it there.
Yeah, but
It's
at
a little bit of a
least
stretch, guys.
well,
And
but
it's
how
not
many,
even, and none of that is actually fun. It's interesting,
But-
but it's not actually fun.
how many people flew
Yeah.
out to Hutton to get that mug and it's not really there?
Yeesh. Or the
Oh,
free
that's
anaconda.
right.
Yeah, the
That's
free
right.
anaconda.
Free
Oh my
anaconda.
god. What is Hutton? That's like a 3-hour like
It's not
sit
quick.
fest.
It's not
It's-
quick. Wait, what? Hang on. Wait a second. Stop. Someone, Gulf X-Ray in the Twitch chat. You went for the anaconda. I'm looking at the camera like it's on. You went for the anaconda.
What?
You should
What?
turn
Do
it
you
on.
didn't?
Oh, he didn't.
I got
Okay,
mine.
thank God. Wait a minute. Son of a gun. God damn.
Hell, I got 2. Where's yours?
I was two-fisting anacondas.
Oh. Oh.
Oh wait, that's
Oh.
kind of porny, isn't it?
Can we-
Whoops.
Elite Dangerous. Oh God. Okay. Anyway.
Dude, when space legs come in, it will all be fixed. We're good.
Space legs.
Will it? Will it though?
No,
Are they procedural legs?
Ah,
it'll randomly generate, and sometimes mismatched legs. You might have
How's-
one short than the other, and then you just walk in a.
I
Walking
think that's just real life. I think our legs are slightly mismatched. Yeah.
I know
You
mine
guys-
are.
Some more than others.
You can get the shoe lift DLC. It'll kind of even it out.
Well, Jim and I were talking about the other day. It would just be like, it'd be nice if they could add or like somehow tweak the flight mechanics of No Man's Sky, or take all of the non-flight stuff from No Man's Sky and put it in Elite Dangerous. That'd be pretty nice.
That would be great. Or Evercron. Not even doesn't even have to be
Or
Elite Dangerous. Yeah.
Elite is a game that it's like
It's a game?
Microsoft Flight Simulator.
It's a game.
It's like
Yes.
Microsoft. It's like Microsoft Flight Simulator, right? Where you really enjoy all the fiddling with the ship and just flying it around is its own joy. But when you get somewhere, you land, and then you take off again. Because there's nothing to do there.
That's pretty much it. I mean, I told you I
So
bought that
can
add-on.
do it. Oh yeah. The well, maybe that's what they need. They need
Yeah.
a third party economy add-on for
yeah.
You know, that's the funny thing about like Doctor Who as an example. In like the early seasons of Doctor Who, and I'm referring to the 2005 pick back up that they did of Doctor Who.
Right.
There's these like random episodes where they would go to like some like alien outpost, and like the Doctor would talk about like, well, this place has like one like the last remaining or some rare thing, like we should go look at it. And it's just like, you can't even do that in Elite. Like, you can't be like, this space station out in like the middle of nowhere, far beyond the reaches of mankind, has like one of the rarest elements. Like, let's go look at it. You can't. Sorry. Just like something with points of interest that are more than just like go here and land and then take off again. Or
I just wish
who can get further the quickest or whatever.
I just wish they'd made it like a Euro Truck Sim 2. Like, all they need is a business layer, because you're running a business. It's just your ship is your business. And
yeah, I'd take that. Yeah,
I would think that Brian has listened to this show before, because I've said that so many times.
Of course.
Yeah,
we've all said that. We've all said that. That's all we want. That's why I bought that thing for Flight Simulator. It basically turns it into Euro Truck Sim.
Oh my God, Paul.
What?
Since you're here,
okay.
Now you've heard the community. You know what we want.
The community. Yeah, we're the community. We're the whole community.
We are.
we're it.
I've always been making what I want.
Dude, it will be so huge in Germany. You will not believe. And then you can build in build in a forklift simulation, right? Where you actually drive the forklift to load the cargo on your ship. Dude, you're going to be rich in Germany.
Let's get back to the actual game we're here to talk about tonight, because we actually have a question about it.
No, that is the game I'm here to talk about tonight. I'm waiting to
spring the trap. Another question about the next game Paul wrote about. He mentioned that it's going to be more RTS than cockpit based. What made him decide on that direction?
Well, there's so many things. Basically,
disappointment in Warcraft 3.
So what's happening is spending 3 years between games is just crazy. You know, it's absolutely crazy. I really have to fight against this. My tendency of just spending all these years sort of grinding away. It's really important on Steam to be releasing games just as fast as possible. That's when you get the attention, right? That's when you get your chance to shine. Waiting 3 years, you know, I've made Void Destroyer 2 has 3 games in it. You know, essentially I could have released maybe 1.5 or 2 games in that span, and gotten to the point potentially of being able to hire a team and make bigger games even faster, you know. So my goal is to cut my development time down to about a year. Initially I was thinking 6 months, but even if I was somehow crazy to do that in 6 months, which is I really doubt, because I'm always late with everything, it wouldn't be a good time to launch a game in 6 months, because it's like Christmas and things like that. So really my window is January, February, like it is, like I released Void Destroyer 2. So I kind of have this deadline of a year. So basically, with that in mind, I can't make 3 games in one anymore. But what I can do is I can take Void Destroyer 2, I can shore up its 4X elements, the late game essentially, slice off the early game, you starting in a fighter, and basically have a 4X game with the best combat of any 4X game out there. Essentially. So, you know, if you play like Master of Orion, right? The original, the combat is okay. For the time, it's fine, right? But then 4X games keep doing that. They keep giving players this mediocre combat, not a lot of control. Some of them are just you don't have any control at all. You know, you just watch a cutscene. Void Destroyer 2 has an 4X layer added. has an RTS layer, and has like a ship flying layer. What I'm essentially going to do is I'm going to slice off the start of the game and place the player almost in the middle of Void Destroyer 2 when they have a base, and then they expand from there. And they can still go to the RTS layer. They can still fly any ship there is, but they can also play it as like a 4X game. And hopefully in doing that, I can grab a bigger audience. Because in Void Destroyer 2, you have to be a fan of Space Sim, you have to be a fan of a real-time strategy game, and you have to be a fan of a 4X game, you know? So it's like a Venn diagram, right?
Right.
And in the middle is the smallest component, right? It's the smallest audience. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to go more for the 4X portion of that Venn diagram, and then say, hey, by the way, guys, you can play like a real-time strategy game, like Homeworld, issue commands. And by the way, guys, you can also play it like a space shooter where you can fly fighters, corvettes, gunships, dreadnoughts, whatever, So I'm still hoping to grab the crazy space sim guys, the crazy RTS guys, the 4X guys. I think that's a bigger market,
I kind of like the idea of like if you have RTS combat, but then you can pick a unit and jump in it and fly it around and do whatever.
That already exists in Void Destroyer 2. All those things already exist. So basically this new game would be taking Void Destroyer 2 and polishing up a lot of the UI to make the 4X element easier and more in depth. That's the last thing I worked on in Void Destroyer 2. The end was the last thing I worked on. So it has the least, least development.
Okay, so in Void Destroyer 2, right? Whenever, as you advance in the game, you end up owning bases and stuff, and kind of like Void Destroyer 1, right, where you started, at the potato or whatever that thing was,
right.
and then you go into RTS mode and you can direct your ships to go attack things, and then you jump into the ship that you want. Because whenever you start in Void Destroyer 2, you just have the one ship, right? But as you acquire other ships, like do they go wherever you say on the map, or do they always kind of follow you in a swarm, or how do you work that?
Both. So some ships are going to be with you, and some ships are going to be independent, and you can give them orders to trade, mine, patrol, guard, invade bases, attack bases, things like that. That's the 4X layer. Okay. Like I haven't played Stellaris, but let's say Stellaris being a good example, right? Where you click on a fleet and you say, hey, go over to that planet, right, and blockade it. That exists in Void Destroyer 2 already. Not at that level of like having a galaxy, but having like a much smaller play area. But that already exists. What I want to do, I want to shore that up with more features. Doing is I'm slicing off a portion of Void Destroyer 2, the start, polishing up the end, and giving the player many of the things they expect in an actual 4X game. Like different starts, random map generation, campaigns. Kind of, it's like if you imagine Sins of a Solar Empire, but with nicer combat. Something like that. As far plus my own takes, and everything that already exists in Void Destroyer 2. So Newtonian physics, projectiles actually being there, so you can actually dodge, you can fly any ship, stuff like that. So my goal is by actually almost like slicing a portion of the game, not including another story, which is like a year, that I can actually do this in a year. Plus, my goal is to put all these things into Void Destroyer 2 first, as much as I can. And hopefully at the very end is some code that won't be in Void Destroyer 2. That's another goal of mine, to bypass early access, but still have players testing the game for me, which I desperately need. So I think it's like a big win-win. I can polish up Void Destroyer 2. I can add more 4X features into it, bug fixing, polish, UI elements, and then branch that off into whatever this new game is going to be called. After that, if that's a good good outcome, continue with the same code and go on to hopefully Void Destroyer 3. And hopefully cut down development time of that too, because I already spent like a year polishing the 4X elements, the game engine, and things like that. But also keeping in mind that not to spend another 3 years after that, because I think I'll be like 50 or something. I think I'll be 50 at that point or something like that. Though Jesus,
Yeah. So beyond that game that we just talked about, we need to start wrapping up. It's getting late for our East Coast folks. Besides that game you just talked about, what are your plans, if any, for any kind of post-release support for Void Destroyer 2 at this point?
Yeah, so essentially it's going to be a year of me adding features that are going to go into this next game. So hopefully things like seamless overworld mode and ship mode. Right now you hit like a key and it just kind of flips you over. There's a bit of a delay, but I want it to be like seamless, where you're basically zooming out. You're using the mouse wheel to like switch between those things, and you can just like zoom in, zoom out, things like that. That'll be a really good thing for the 4X game. So hopefully that'll be put into Void Destroyer 2. The thing is saving anywhere, which would be pretty cool. You can save in the middle of a battle, which would be good again for the 4X game, because you want to like save at any time in a 4X game. You don't want to like spend an hour in a battle and then have to redo it.
Right.
Especially when the battles get so big. Players have talked a lot about like the fleet management, that it's kind of cumbersome to make a fleet. Later on, you make several fleets, and at that point you're basically tossing like hundreds of ships at enemy bases, and they're gonna all be destroyed. And you're gonna have to make another fleet and another fleet and another fleet, and that's kind of like cumbersome right now for according to a lot of players. So things like that, like enhancing those elements. Maybe even some diplomacy, stuff like that. So maybe we'll do some DLCs, hopefully. I talked to one existing artist from Void Destroyer 1, Void Destroyer 2, if he wants to bring a faction over from Void Destroyer 1 into Void Destroyer 2 as a DLC.
Ooh.
I'm also talking to another artist to make potentially a new faction for Void Destroyer 2. What I'm trying to do there is I'm trying to make DLCs mostly about the art, so they don't take as much of my time. But I think I will still have to spend a decent chunk of time like adding missions. So I don't want to just release like a bunch of ships for whatever dollar amount that we figure out. It's a little cheap, what I mean? Just releasing ships. I'm sure many players would be happy with that, but I want to add some missions and things like that for those factions, not to just make them like, hey, here's some ships you can buy,
Right.
For real money, like Star Citizen. Except it's like a few bucks. But
hey, at least you're not selling just pictures of ships.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you're selling.
So definitely want to. Those things hopefully will turn out well. And that's a little different change for me too. It's sort of testing the waters, how a sort of a revenue share might work for the next game. The DLC might be a good test for that, like how it goes like that. A lot of plans, a lot of things I didn't even think of. When I make these games, it's sort of one idea flows into the next. Oh, this needs work. Oh, okay, now that this is here, this other thing could really help it. Oh, and now that I have this other thing just is screaming to be done, you know. So hopefully it'll be a good amount of work in Void Destroyer 2, adding those sort of 4X elements, and then just being able to take all that into the new game. Just sort of like a win-win at that point, you know, like supporting quite a lot more than Void Destroyer 1 in a way. But Void Destroyer 1, being a linear game, it just had like a natural end, you know.
Right.
Whereas in a sandbox game, you can just keep expanding it. You know, you can just say, hey, this other area next to the main area also has some stuff. You know, you can always sort of grow it. Whereas like in a linear story-based game, you can't be like, oh, let's go back in the middle here and shove some stuff in there. It just doesn't work like that, you know.
No, that makes sense. We have one last question from the audience. Will you be upgrading the Void Destroyer 2 art assets to the new realistic style as well?
So I can't really say if it's going to be a realistic style. Yeah, it's really hard to answer that question.
Sure.
It depends, really depends on the artist more so than me. It's kind of funny to say it like that, but I'm always working with scarcity, whether it's going to be a realistic style. And even if, let's say, I did find an artist that does a realistic style, then it's like, hey, how many ships of that can I get? You know, obviously I'm going to want a lot of ships.
Yeah. Right.
They probably won't be Void Destroyer 2 ships. If I go with a new art style, converting them over would probably take as long as it would take making new ships. So it's probably just better to just make new ships, you know. So I want to do some crazy wild ideas. In Void Destroyer 2, the factions were really balanced against each other, and every faction had to have like starting ships, middle ships, and end ships, because the player might fly to the pirates and buy their fighter, you know, so their fighter has to be competitive and balanced against the other ships. In a 4X game, you can be a little wilder, you know. You can, the player sort of is starting with like a little mini empire, right? Like in, let's say, Master of Orion, they have more resources, so it doesn't have to be quite as balanced. Like every ship doesn't have to be quite as balanced. So I want to make all kinds of just crazy ships. I would go for more like Expanse style ships. That would be a little my dream.
Yes.
Man, I love that series. I would love to have like tons of like point defense on ships, and have missiles flying at long range and rail guns at long range, things like that, you know. I would love to go more realistic, like, you know, why like ships tend to have most of their weapon up front, but then ships run from each other. Why not put a ton of weapons in the back, right? So one faction might be more geared towards running away and shooting at you, you know. And if you're the player, those tactics might be kind of interesting. Just kind of wilder stuff like that. I think I can make sort of way stronger factions that don't have to be balanced against each other, you know. Can make just crazier factions like that. Void Destroyer 1 had some crazy factions, like the drill ships, you know.
Right. I forgot
pretty
about
wild
the drill
faction,
ships.
kind of stuff like that, you know. Kind of stuff like that.
Kind of getting into Warhammer craziness there. It sounds like if you go more in that direction.
Not quite as much, trying to keep it realistic, you know?
Right.
Sort of like future realistic, kind of like the Expanse-ish.
Maybe like the Reavers from Firefly.
One faction might be, so one faction might be focused on speed. The other one might be focused on armor, you know, slower. Just making them a little more distinct, more like rock paper shotgun type stuff, you know, where this faction is strong against this faction, that faction is strong against that faction, that kind of stuff. That'll be some stuff I would look into, and that really relies a lot on if I can get the art for it. Because if I just draw boxes, you know, I can do that myself, right? Bigger box, smaller box, pointier box, you know. but people aren't gonna go for that. So a lot of stuff depends on an artist. A lot of stuff depends on stuff outside of my control.
Right.
If I had like a team, if I had an office, it'd be a different story. Just say, hey, dude, make these ships. Make me 5 different type of ships, and I'll choose the nicest one or the most interesting faction or whatever. Versus like, oh, okay, you made this, okay, thanks. Here's your money.
Right.
Thank you very much. You really helped me, but ideally, you would spend like, instead of 3 days on this, you would spend like a week on one fighter, and you made like 10 variants of it. You know what I mean? And then we have a big meeting and we choose the best one, and then you do that for the next ship and the next ship and the next ship. It's just like a question of budget, So yeah, those are going to be some interesting things, some interesting challenges that I'm trying to do things differently than before. So a lot of unknowns.
That sounds awesome, dude. So folks, the game
always
is
do, right? All the developers always like sound awesome, right? And then they make something.
But you deliver in the most part. Like, folks, the game is Void Destroyer 2. If you look at its Steam page, it's getting very positive reviews. I think it's actually very positive. It says, "Yep, very positive." Good, 82. Yeah, Steam DB rating of 82.25, which is great. So yeah, you've got great Steam reviews. We're just so happy to see this is successful, and that it actually happened. I mean, you could have fallen off not the wagon, but you could have fallen in a pit and never done this again. And we've been like, okay, it's another space game that never got finished. Excuse me, but we're really glad. Not only that
it's funny. I was telling this to my wife that I remember, like, this was years ago when I still had a regular job at a regular office. Like, they asked me to fly somewhere to this other office to set up some servers. And I'm like, man, I'm kind of nervous on this flight. Like, I never felt like nervous on a flight. What the hell, And then I'm like, oh, if I died, I would never finish Void Destroyer. Oh my God. I'm like, this is why I'm afraid of death, that I would not finish Void Destroyer.
And then
here I am in Void Destroyer 2. It's just weird, man. It's just weird when you work on a long project like this. Like, stuff gets weird, So yeah, I definitely had to finish it, and it was a great relief to finish it.
I'm sure, and I'm glad you're not.
I got super lucky.
Go ahead. Yeah, you got super lucky.
I think I got super lucky in many, many events. I could have had more luck in the other ones, but in many ways, even on the release date, I was going to launch a week later around Valentine's Day, but I'm like, nah, Valentine's Day doesn't sound right, and Valentine's, like the day before Valentine's Day, like all these really cool games came out, like Wolcen.
Right.
And Metro Exodus came out. All these like games that would have just squished me like a bug, Instead, I stayed on the Steam page, the new and trending, for like a week, which was like amazing. And even those games are like pushed off by other games. So if I had a week longer release, I don't know if like the new game would have happened, or future games might have not happened. Might have had to get like a real job. And say, hey, how was your weekend? Oh man, another Monday. I was like practicing my lingo again. Oh, did you see the game last night? What a crazy game, huh?
What'd you do over the weekend? Did you go antiquing?
I don't know if I can do it. Trying to practice, practice the lingo, because it's been like 5 years or something.
The office lingo. I don't miss it either. I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
So again, folks, the game is Void Destroyer 2 for, I believe, $15, right? $15? Yes. $15. You get Probably one of the most impressive space sandboxes, single player space sandboxes you will find, especially at that price. Just such a value you're getting for that price. Oh, it's $20.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Sorry. Still, that's an
Yeah,
amazing
I
value.
bumped it up.
Oh, when you left early. Oh, that makes sense. No, that's still an
The
amazing
whole other
value.
story on that. Yeah, the only reason to bump it up is so you can discount it more. It's ridiculous.
No, I believe it.
It's
I totally
ridiculous.
believe it. It's all part of the game of being a game developer on Steam. That's its own meta game.
Yeah.
No, I totally. If I raise the price now, I could drop it more later, and it'll look like a better sale, and
Yeah.
people will be like, "Ooh, I
It's
want it now."
ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it's not, because we're all impulsive
Yeah.
freaks, and we all have so many games, but we can't stop buying games. That's the game. Is how many games can you own?
The sad thing is, there's a huge. It's not sad. I'm the same way. I shouldn't say it's sad, but there's a huge just gamers that are only going to buy games on sale.
Yep,
You know,
I'm one of them.
so
Yep.
it almost doesn't matter what the price of the game is, within reason. You know, obviously,
Right.
within
But-
reason. Obviously,
But you will
Plus,
have those
I mean,
folks
you don't want to like.
You will have some folks that'll buy stuff right out of the gate, though. Like there are
Yeah,
those
exactly.
gamers.
So there's people that
Yeah.
are going to buy a game that's not on sale, and they don't really care about the price as much. You know.
Exactly.
So, and plus the game grew so much since early access. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to increase the price. I've never done that before. I was so nervous about it. And because of that, I had to skip the Thanksgiving sale, which was like, man, I was so nervous about that because I did it a little too late. Because you can't raise the price and go on sale within a certain amount of time on Steam.
Oh, geez.
And then I'm
what?
like, you know what? I'm going to skip the Christmas sale too. I'm going to skip the Christmas sale. I'm not going to put the game on Christmas to try to concentrate people into release, you know, to bump me up in that crucial ranking to get on the popular games thing. So I was doing all these crazy things that I've never done before, like just sweating bullets. And I think if I launched a week later, I would have been just squished like a bug, you know, just totally.
Kind of amazing.
I think 1 week later would have made a huge difference in 3 years.
Yeah,
of
because so much
development,
crap came out that week. You're absolutely right. I forgot about that. Like it feels like so long ago, but it was like a week and a half. It was so long
Yeah.
ago. But yeah, we around here we couldn't be happier for the success of Void Destroyer 2.
Thank
And
you.
we cannot
and
wait.
you
to
guys have always been like like I always say this, the Space Game Junkie community has always been like so welcoming to developers, you know, like everywhere else you go and they like, get out of here with your game, jerk. We don't want
Really?
to play any new game.
What?
You know, we just want our existing games, you know.
Oh.
Except like Space Game Junkie, they're like, "Oh, cool, man! He's making a game. Yeah, show it. Tell us about it." You know?
Yeah,
Get on the-
we love
get
game
on the
developers.
Podcast, you know, we'll make a video on it. Yeah, it's great. It's
Yeah,
great.
we do love game developers. So, folks, just a couple of quick programming notes before we wrap up. Next week on the podcast, we're doing. Oh God, we're gonna have an early show because we're welcoming back another former guest. We're gonna have the developers of wait, where is it? Yeah, we're gonna have the developers of Avorion on. Their game is about to leave early access after a fairly long period as well. And so they're God, where are they? In Germany? I forget where they are. They're way over there. And so we're gonna have them on at 6 a.m. our time. We haven't done a 6 a.m. podcast in a while. So this will be interesting. So yeah, that's going to be a 6 a.m. Pacific time podcast next week. Tomorrow for the stream, we're trying out a new game called No King, No Kingdom. It is a first-person real-time strategy game where you apparently control your forces from the back of a dragon. So that sounds fun. I can't wait to try that. And I want to thank you all for hanging out with us today. Your time, and I say this a lot, but I mean it sincerely, your time is your most valuable thing. You can't buy more time. So we really appreciate you spending it with us. And we're also trying to make this a full-time endeavor. So you can go to spacegamejunkie.com/support to find all the ways to help make that happen. Patreon, merch store, all that. And finally, we want to thank especially our wonderful patrons who help literally keep the lights on around here. Couldn't do what we do around here without you. So thank you so much. Paul, again, thank you so much for coming on. And we hope to have you back for whenever your next thing, we can actually play your next thing, whatever it's going to be called.
Cool. Yeah. I have a name. It's a pretty good name. Pretty excited. I can't say it though.
Yeah, don't say it now. Wait until you're sure. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. And back here on the podcast next week. Have a great night or day or whatever time it is for y'all. Bye-bye.